How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the second installment of SKOL Spotlight here on the Purple Code. Once again, we're going to give a Viking player that we like going into this week 2 preseason. Just like last week, we picked Kellen Mond as a player that we thought could step up and needed to step up. And as you guys saw, he actually did. I think he did take that spot from Sean Mannion for that second quarterback spot. So going into this, I'm your host. We are your hosts. I'm Jamie Gellerstedt.
And I'm Casey Granda of GG Sports Podcast on YouTube. Make sure to go check us out there. Before today, we picked a player who at this point, coming into the season, he was pictured to be a second, maybe even third string guy because of his age. As training camp wore on, he stepped into a bigger role. You saw him kind of get some first team reps, kind of split first and second team. First week of the preseason, he came out and he impressed a lot of people in the time that he was out there. I think there's a ton to be excited about this guy. And I think this week, the reason we picked this player is because this week, we really do feel like if he comes out and he does what he did last week, he's going to take a hold of the starting spot at this position. Now, I know, Jamie, you had a few stats about this guy.
Nothing too crazy. I just want to say, like, last year, so he's comes from the LSU. We got a lot of LSU guys. Who could it possibly be? The second hint is he is a rookie this year, and he had an 82.6 passing grade from PFF, which we've desperately needed. So it's good that we're seeing him improve. I don't know if they know who this could possibly be. LSU. I mean, it could be Patrick Peterson, Justin Jefferson. I mean,
but you already said he was a rookie. So let's just get right into it. The man we're talking about today is none other than right guard Ed Ingram, as Jamie said from LSU. Last week he really came out and he impressed a lot of people. Like, I know the week of training camp before the preseason game, a lot of people were hyping him up. He was getting first team reps because before he was getting some first team reps, but that was only when Jesse Davis, the incumbent guard who was we picked up from Miami on free agency. Everyone thought, he's got the spot on lock. He was on vet days. That's why Ed Ingram was stepping in. But this last week, Ed Ingram stepped in there without him even being injured or without him being on those vet days. He obviously was healthy, was not injured. So that shows a lot about Ed Ingram. And he went out with first preseason game and he proved it. Like like Jamie said, pass blocking was big. He's a run mauler. So we really think that after this week, like I kind of said in our intro piece about this guy, after this week, Ed Ingram could take a hold of that starting right guard spot. And honestly, I think he should. Jesse Davis didn't really show us a lot to be excited about. I wasn't super excited about him to begin with when we brought him in. Obviously, he's a guy with experience, which is great. If Ed Ingram didn't come in and take these steps right away, at least you have a guy who's played there before. Jesse Davis was a right tackle last year. He struggled there. When he had played guard with Miami, he was solid. So, we thought that'd be a good transition. Obviously, so far, hasn't worked out that way. At least only one preseason game. We can't get into it too much. Why with Kellen Mond, we can't say he's the guy now. But I really do think that Ed Ingram is showing us what he's made of. And after this week, I have a strong feeling. I'm going to just come right out and say it. He's going to earn that starting right guard spot after this week of the preseason.
Let's go. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm excited. We've been looking for a guy to fill that spot. We drafted Ed Ingram. We traded with the Packers. We traded with the Lions. And it kind of came down. Ed Ingram was like that extra guy that we got from all those trades, I believe. And if he shows up and he ends up being a starter week 1 coming in this year, I mean, and if he obviously has to play well, but still, that's already a good sign. And I think if that happens, we won those trades, regardless if it's inside the divisions. At that point, that was their fault for trading inside divisions and not ours. I wanted to dive in a little bit. So I don't know how anybody feels about PFF, but it's at least a solid way to kind of get an idea of how a player works. And from last week, Ingram had 87.3 PFF grade, and Jesse Davis had a 45.4 PFF grade. We know Jesse Davis allowed a sack in like 5 snaps or whatever, 17 snaps I think he had, allowed a sack. I think Ed Ingram only allowed like 1 quarterback pressure in his amount of time playing, whatever. But yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a huge improvement. I mean, it's especially from just how the last couple of weeks have been going. Like you said, he's not just getting first team reps when Jesse Davis is on vet days. He's obviously taken advantage of those first team reps, and now he's getting real first team reps. And going into the game this weekend, I am actually interested to see maybe Ed Ingram. They will decide to give Ed Ingram the first team this time. If not, I'll be kind of surprised if they do. I don't know if they will for sure, but I think it's time to. And if not, I think he'll definitely get it going into the third preseason game. And like you said, I think we see him as our starting right guard week 1 against the Packers.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. And a big thing too is the San Francisco 49ers, they always bring a good defense. That's been one of the stalwarts of their team over the last however many seasons, is that defense is always strong. So he's going to get to go up against some really, really
Joey
high level
Bosa's,
defense, very high level defense.
Nick Bosa
is going to be huge. Yeah, Bosa. I mean, obviously Bosa is more on the edge, but he's still going to get some of those middle interior guys plus linebackers. Like, and last week it was weird because I feel like Vegas blitzed us a lot, is what the Paul Allen and Pete Versus were saying. So who knows if the 49ers try to employ the same strategy. It would be interesting to see that happen. But I think we're going to get to see Ed Ingram against a really solid defense at all levels. Obviously, he might not play against the starters, like you said, if he doesn't start. But the 49ers always have good depth on defense. So we'll get to see him against a very high quality, very well coached San Francisco 49ers defense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm excited. I think our second team offensive lineman just played great in general last week, which is good to see because outside of struggling to have good people on our offensive lineman, our depth has always not been very good either. So that's also good to know. But yeah, man, outside of Ed Ingram, is there any other players that you're excited to see? I know the obvious one is this Kellen Mond Manny in battle for that second quarterback spot, but
I'm going to keep it on the offensive line here. So last week, the offensive line looked pretty solid against the ones of, Vegas, not Oakland. So I just want to see that. I just want to see the offensive line continue to gel and continue to improve overall, because that's the biggest thing. If that offensive line can play, they don't need to be a top 5 offensive line. If they can be a top 15 offensive line, a top 17 offensive line, just give Kirk some time. That's all Kirk needs is time. The guy's smart. The guy can make all the throws. He just needs more time to be able to decipher the field and make his decision and throw the football. So I just want to see that offensive line continue to gel. Speaking of quarterbacks and making decisions, that's another thing you said, Kellen Mond. I want to see him keep making those progressions a little bit quicker. And the offensive line, they're giving him more time, which is great, but you don't need to take all that time back there. If your first read's open, get rid of the ball or move on to the second one a little bit faster. I want to see him start to process those a little bit quicker with the help of the offensive line, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see everything you said. I want to see that Kellen on the offense, but I think in this game, and then also, the running backs, of course, Ty Chandler and Keenan is just so fun to watch. But I think I'm more worried about the defense outside of the Ed Ingram thing, just because we've mentioned this actually in one of our podcasts. Again, go check out GT Sport Podcast, subscribe on there about this week against Trey Lance, and Zimmer's defenses never did really well against rushing quarterbacks. And that's something that we'll be able to see this week. And I just want to see how we can handle it in Donatello's defense, and running a 3-4 and all that stuff. But as far as more players go, I'm a guy I'm going to be watching a lot this week, and I'm really excited about, and I think is going to have a big game, is actually Lewis Seen. Obviously he's rookie first rounder, but I think last week he played pretty well. He was in the right spot a lot. You didn't hear his name very often, which can be pretty good for coming from a safety spot. But I think we'll see some of those bigger plays this week and those bigger hits, and I'm excited for that. And another one is Brian Asamoah. I thought last week he ran around with tons of energy, running sideline to sideline. You could see his speed, you could see his energy. He's a guy that I'm really excited to watch throughout the preseason as well. But what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, preseason, we could almost call this thing rookie spotlight, not necessarily SKOL Spotlight. We talk a lot about rookies, but that's what it's all about. Preseason's all about rookies and young players proving their worth to this team, because the starters are going to be there. Obviously, there's a few starters who might be on the cusp a little bit, but I don't think anybody that's started last week has any worry about not making the team. I think there's a lot of people that maybe won't be starters, but I think all the people that started will make the team no matter what. So this is all about the young guys, the rookies, making an impact, showing the coaches, hey, put me on this team. I'll help you guys out. I know what I'm doing out here. So that's really, at the end of the day, that's what preseason is all about. And that's what we're seeing. And that's why I think Ed Ingram was a good choice for this week. because he improved last week, and he's the, when I think of anybody who's going to make another jump, I think it's going to be him, especially against his defense, and it's going to be super fun to see. Any other thoughts player wise for the week?
Let's just get Ingram in that right guard spot and fill that massive hole we've been trying to do forever.
Yeah, for sure. So that'll do it for this episode of SKOL Spotlight. You can find us of GG Sports Podcast on here every Thursday on the Purple Code Facebook and YouTube. When you go to the YouTube channel to subscribe to them, make sure you head over to GG Sports Podcast, subscribe to us, and we'll see you guys next week on SKOL Spotlight right here on the Purple Code.